Good morning, everyone. If I told you that right now I could tell you how to fix American politics in 10 minutes, would you think that I was crazy? No. Good. Because when I started Run for America, that's what I told people, and everybody thought that I was totally crazy. And what we realized is to look at how we fix government, we should really go back to the beginning of this country and what our founders did. In 1787, our founders came together and they recruited the best and brightest minds they could possibly find to come together for a constitutional convention to figure out how to create a new system of governance, a new country that had never been seen before. And in order to do this, they said, well, we got to have some really good talent at the table. So they brought together people from all across our young and small country at the time to bring this into being. Now, if you think about today and how we look at institutions, we have a relatively similar process. In every one of our biggest institutions, we say we need to identify, recruit, train, and retain our best and brightest talent. Otherwise, we can't get anything done. So every one of our biggest institutions looks at it this way, except in how we think about who runs for office, where perhaps it's actually the most important place to identify talent and leadership. We don't necessarily do it. So I'm happy to say that we at Run for America are trying to reverse that trend. We started Run for America a couple years ago based on this idea that if we want to solve our biggest problems, we have to have our best and brightest minds at the table. So in 2016, we'll run 12 candidates for Congress, Democrats, Republicans, independents, all who come from non-traditional backgrounds as innovators, entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, people who have proven track records as outside-of-the-box thinkers, as people who defy the status quo, and the kind of people, frankly, who used to be the kind of people who ran for office, but today just have decided to do other things with their lives. So they don't seek careers as politicians. They don't find themselves constantly motivated by the idea of re-election. So we said, OK, you're probably thinking, how do you possibly win these races? And sounds great, some great people into office. But we said, if we're going to do this, we have to do something that no one's ever done before. So we did a comprehensive data analysis of every single congressional district in the country. We looked at every district for 40 different data sets to figure out where were there strategic opportunities to activate the kind of voters who are just waiting for more pragmatic, idealistic, entrepreneurial, problem-solving people who are focused on the future and how we get there. So we looked at where are the places in the country with the highest percentage of the electorate between the ages of 18 and 35. We looked at places where there were large numbers of independents. We looked at places where it was actually relatively cheap to win a congressional race. We put all these things together and found about 30 districts all over the country where you could actually go in and build an unlikely coalition of voters. Because in American politics, everything is based on the supposition of likely voters. Likely voters are about 40% of the population. They're the people who tend to turn out in elections. They're more white. They're more affluent. They're more partisan. They're people who care much more about what happens and who are deeply invested in the system. And yet, they are not actually reflective of the country as a whole. And the other 60% are not necessarily disengaged. They're just unwilling to turn out for anything in the current system. And that's why incumbents continue to win who are so mediocre. In this election, some of you may know this, there are actually 3 people who are convicted criminals who are running for election after coming out of jail, and all of them look like they're going to win. So in a system where our approval of the people in our institution is so low, and we think they're corrupt, and we think they're a bunch of crooks, it actually becomes a lot easier for someone who's actually a crook to get elected in the next place. So we looked at this and we sort of moneyballed the situation. And in 2016, we'll be running these candidates' campaigns, training them, building them into the kind of leaders who can come together as part of a movement and a coalition to actually get things done. We like to think of ourselves as political entrepreneurs. Really what the founding fathers were at the beginning of our society, who said, how do we think as boldly and innovatively as possible to do something that's never been done before? And that's what our political system needs. Because when I travel all over this country, I see incredible new models being created, by entrepreneurs, by people in cities and communities who are coming together to solve problems and create solutions. Because while we've never had more challenges in this country, we've also never had more opportunity. And that's the kind of energy that we desperately need inside Washington. It's the only place where we don't have that sense of spirit. This country has long been founded on the ideas of imagination and experimentation. But over the past decade, we've lost our way in that regard. So we think a lot now about this question of gridlock, right? How do we get government to work? Things are so broken, things are so dysfunctional. I just want something to work. I want something to happen. We get obsessed with that idea. But that's not what we want. We want vision. We want real leadership that actually says, not just how do we pass a benign piece of legislation through a committee, but how do we actually rethink what our education system could look like and should be? How do we think about what's a vision for what our economy looks like in the 21st century? The kind of things that not only require government leadership, but require people who are open and willing to collaborate and understand and listen to the people all over this country who are actually making things happen. And that's our vision of where this country could go, and frankly, where it needs to go if we're going to survive and be the country we want to be in the next 10 to 20 years. So a lot of people are rightly frustrated and disappointed. It's causing the best of us to say, and I can't tell you how many times I hear this, politics is just not for me. I can't even deal with it. And I hear this from so many smart, passionate people like many of you here in this audience. And it frustrates me because I understand and I sympathize, but as each one of us who has a great mind, who has that talent, who has that capability, and who cares about making the world a better place, and wants to live a meaningful life, as each one of us says, it's too broken, it's too dysfunctional, it can't possibly be fixed, we are ceding more and more control to the same forces and the same people who have made it as broken as it is, and allowing it only to get more problematic and more dysfunctional. We can no longer afford, as Americans, as citizens, as people who are trying to be rebels and people who are trying to fight for progress, to ignore government as citizens, as candidates, and as people who are actually invested in the system. So we need each and every one of you to be part of this fight, because it isn't just a fight for politics or a fight for who gets elected. It's really a fight about our future. And if we can think about politics in that way, we can get back to where we need to be, and we can move into the 21st century in American governance. Thank you guys very much.